MLB.com's Barry Bloom, national reporter with Armen and Levack on 104.5 The Team. Barry was in nearby Cooperstown yesterday for the induction ceremony. Barry, with Smoltz, Johnson, and Pedro, was this the feeling that this was the best class of pitchers we've ever had?
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time you've had 3 voted in and 3 inducted in the same year, and the baseball writers haven't elected 4 guys in the same year in something like 60 years. So, yeah, it was I think an incredible class. You know, you had in 2 years, Maddox with 355 wins, Glevin with 305, and Johnson with 303. And to me, the way they use pitching now, they may be the last 300-game winners we'll ever see. So, yeah, it was a really historical day yesterday.
Barry, when you're placing your vote for a starting pitcher, how much does the air quote steroid era factor into that? The fact that they were successful during this date and age?
It gave me more of a second look at guys like Morris and Blyleven, who were on the ballot for a long time. And now, the eligibility is down to 10 years rather than 15, which really, I think, shortens the shelf life of some of these guys. Because once you went through the steroid era, not to mention the fact that, these guys like Blyleven has 60 shutouts, X amount of complete games. Just looking back, Mel Stottlemyre, when the Yankees put the plaque for him out in center field at Old-Timers Day a month ago, he has like 165 wins and 370 starts and 150 complete games. It's just stuff that isn't done anymore in this era. So I think you look at it, not just the steroid era, but you look at it cast against, the way starting pitchers are used and young starting pitchers are used right now, and the plethora of Tommy John surgeries to young kids, either before they get to the major leagues or when they get to the major leagues. I think it gives you a different look.
MLB columnist Barry Bloom with Armen and Levack. He was at the MLB inductions yesterday. John Smoltz had a very serious tone when he brought up Tommy John surgery and its significance. We're going to look back many years from now, Barry, and have other Tommy John guys, he being the first. We're going to have other Tommy John success stories, and we're probably going to look back at this and remember him being the first one. Do you think?
You know what? I think he might be the last one.
Really?
I'm not so sure about all that because their view of it is that it's going to shorten the shelf life of a lot of these guys. So your susceptibility for the long term of having it happen again is pretty good. And once it happens again, the history of that is I think there's only one starting pitcher who's come back from it and started regularly, and that's Chris Capuano. So to me, unless the Veterans Committee actually puts Tommy John in, and Tommy John should be in. If he had been a 300-game winner like Sutton, he'd be in. Why he's not, why we didn't vote him in, I'm not sure.
MLB.com's Barry Bloom with Armen and Levack, 104.5 The Team. And by the way, we talked to Tommy John recently. He agrees with you, Barry. He thinks he should be in the Hall of Fame too. He has no problem with letting you know that.
Barry, as this weekend goes on, you've been to numerous ceremonies. What's the part of this that when you look back, you're going to go, 2015 Hall of Fame class, that ceremony, what's the one thing you're going to take with you that you're always going to remember?
For those of us, and I love the World Baseball Classic, it's one of my favorite things. I covered the first 3 extensively from top to bottom. The games that involving the Dominican Republic, and, they won the last time, they ran the table. They won every game. And every time you see them play, no matter where they play, whether it's down in their home or whether it's in the States, it's a huge crowd. They bring out the congas and the cymbals and the flags. And it's much different than watching, just your state-old major league game. Yesterday was like that. It was like a WBC game there yesterday because that's what was going on as Pedro came to the podium. And I love the scene of, Manfred reading the plaque and Pedro boogieing up there to the cymbals, and the conga beats in the audience and the chanting of his name. It was so different and so refreshing. And it was like, look, Pedro was a rock star there yesterday, and the rest of the guys are great players. But it separated the whole thing. I've been to a dozen of these, maybe, probably more, and everyone has its own flavor to it, and everyone is distinct. But this one had this, and he's the second one to get into the Hall as a Dominican. He and Marichal coming 32 years apart.
Barry Bloom of MLB.com. All right, Barry, we are your home for New York Yankees baseball in the Albany area. What are the Pinstripes going to do here at the deadline? What do you think?
Well, you know what? I don't really think they need to do much at the deadline. I think when you do this, you always run the risk of you bring somebody else into the mix. It changes the chemistry of the club. They have to settle in. You know, my major example of that is what happened with the Dodgers a few years ago. You know, they made that whopper trade with the Red Sox, brought in Beckett and Adrian Gonzalez, and everybody basically said it was a mid-August trade, and that basically they said this was a shoe away for the Dodgers to win their division and maybe go to the World Series. They didn't even go to the postseason. I like the Yankees. I think Cashman is right. I picked them right from the division, right from the get-go in spring training to win the division, albeit with all these questions answered that they were able to answer the first half of the season, you know, being A-Rod, how great he's played, Sabathia being able to at least pitch decently every few times out, Tanaka's elbow holding up, the bullpen now, you know, with Miller saving and closing with Betances as the eighth inning guy, as he was last year. You know, they're getting enough starting pitching from the other guys. Evaldi's had a great year for them. I just think if I'm the Cashman, you know, why give up any of my younger guys for a Cole Hamels or somebody when you don't really need it? Because I really do believe they're going to run away with the division.
Barry Bloom of MLB.com, national reporter and columnist. Make sure to check him out, especially as we inch toward Friday's trade deadline. Barry, thanks so much for your time today, for filling us in from Cooperstown over the weekend, and we'll be in touch in the future.
Anytime. Thanks for having me on.